Hello, and welcome to Just Three Workplace Gurus, a podcast about the real world of work. I'm Amy.
I'm Mike.
I'm Vivian.
Our conversation's based off the reality of work, what's working, what's not, what we're seeing in our professional lives. Today, I'm super excited to have two industry guests who have a great pulse on the market. They've seen it all and are here today to share their thoughts. Meera Agrawal and Joe Brady are based in the San Francisco Bay Area and have seen many changes today that we want to share with us from the current state of corporate real estate. Meera, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm a co-owner of AP+I Design. We're a global interior architecture firm based in Mountain View, right in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And we've worked with many clients, not just tech, but also in the financial arena and venture capital, law firms, you name it.
Great. And Joe, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Joe Brady. I work at Cushman and Wakefield, and I've been in commercial real estate for over 20 years, starting my career at Cressa, having many years then at Savills and now at Cushman and Wakefield. And my entire career I've spent protecting and defending tenants. I am a tenant rep advisor. I'm heavily focused on tech companies, and I've never represented a landlord. I think this is the best business in the world. I get to work with some of the greatest people ever, and it's an honor to be on here, this podcast with you guys. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate it because it's been a challenging market over the last few years, and I'm sure you both have experienced that as we have. What do you find as some of the challenges that you are solving for currently?
It's really the basics. Before the pandemic, our job was to help our clients find real estate solutions that kind of match their business and their business needs in real estate. And sadly, today, identifying what their real estate needs are for the business it's very ambiguous. I would say that most of the challenges in commercial real estate are just at the beginning out of the gate, which is, what are we solving for? I mean, where do we want to be? How many people do we need? What's the space going to look like? And oh, by the way, we have a tighter budget now. So it's, I'd say one of the biggest challenges is, again, just identifying the actual parameters for a real estate requirement.
And are those challenges coming from the clients, your corporate clients who are saying, we don't really know? Like theoretically, we think we're going to have X amount of people, X amount of days, but in reality, like, is that what you're seeing that's playing out?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's who's going to come in, what department are they in? When they come in, what do they need to do? How many days will they come in? If we're going to be, getting a new office space, what do we need to put there to support these ranges of people coming in to do what they need to do? It's just so many variables. And what makes it even more challenging is what you solve for in the Silicon Valley is going to be very different than how you operate your Manhattan office or your Austin office. I mean, it's like, and again, I'm going to say this too much, but before the pandemic, it was relatively universal, consistent across the world for the most part, with the exception of India, where you've got, maybe some higher densities and some interesting characteristics in real estate. But in the States, for sure, before the pandemic, it was relatively consistent. And then now it's variables galore.
Joe, you're on the front end, whereas Meera is sort of on the back end of a project.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding that their decision-making process changes over the course of a search, that they think differently about it, or the more they talk about it and the more space they look at, the more clear it becomes to them? Or, what's that experience been like?
So that's a very good question. This is so interesting. You guys are all perfectly aware of like the seasons in a year and how those different seasons play into how real estate gets used. I mean, November, December, not used very much. Summertime, it's often a different utilization than like right now in April when all the kids are in school. So yes, I mean, as we spend a few months identifying a requirement, searching the market, looking at the opportunities, a couple of things happen. One, the search parameters change just because the company learns something new or they want to do something different. And two, their utilization is totally goes different. It goes wonky because the time of the year it is. So yes, I mean and the transaction process these days is also taking a very long time, and which is very different. I mean, it's a challenging, long process because, Mike, you're right. I mean, just changes happen all the time.
I think
Very
looking at the
interesting.
drivers too of what's going to attract these people back into the office, right? We're trying to change, and I feel like the drivers are continuously changing into the reasons why people would come in or why they won't come in.
Yeah.
So Meera, on the back end, what are you finding in terms of how once they've settled on a space, that tenant thinks about what they want it to look like, what they want to accomplish there?
Yeah, I think universally, at least what we're seeing right now is clients really want to create spaces to help encourage a culture of engagement, whether that's collaboration or professional growth or social gathering. It's all about bringing folks together. I think regardless of if you're a remote first company or you have a mandatory 4 days a week in the office, I think they're still finding value in us being together a certain number of days. And so those are the things that we're trying to address. And, just as Joe mentioned, this is not 2019 anymore. You can't, it's not about the counts. It's not about a fixed ratio. It's really, it's different for every client, and it's based on their company's priorities around the purpose of coming into the office. The other portion is focus spaces and inclusive meeting spaces. You'll probably hear me saying inclusive and equity a lot on this podcast, but those are two extremely important things. I think people are recognizing that, being on a Zoom call and having half your team at home versus in the room, there's a bit of inequity that's definitely apparent there in that meeting. And so how do you create that equity between everybody and not feel like somebody is an outsider or being left out because they're not there in person? So these are kind of some of the problems that we're trying to solve right now with the clients that we're working with.
Amy, I'm going to ask you a question that comes from that, and that is, are you seeing the same thing? In other words, the focus is not, I feel like the projects that I'm working on, the focus is not on workstations, it's more on the conference room furniture, the collaboration areas, the phone booths, all of that. Are you seeing that in what is happening on the furniture side?
Absolutely. It's becoming more of an experiential space, right? It's not to come in and be focused, although some people do use the office for that. And you provide those tools, but for a lot of people, it's really a place to gather, connect, collaborate, right? So we're doing a lot more of that. We have a lot of clients now who are virtual first. So the offices that we're designing are really event centers, right? You've taken almost like your workplace team and they are now facilitating day-long meetings or week-long meetings for a team to come in. So it has changed. The other thing I think that's changed that I think is a positive is when we work on things as if it's more of an independent request. So for instance, if instead of looking at, we have 500 employees and everybody's going to get the same workstation and the same experience. Mm-hmm. Now it's very focused on maybe that team or that individual and what their needs are. So we're really trying to help address that as well.
You have, we had a very interesting thing that happened with one of our clients. They expanded during COVID because they could now hire remotely. Then edict came down that not just said, you have to come into the office, I think 3 days a week. But if you have like a year if you've moved away or you were hired far away, to get yourself close enough to the office to come back in. So that was kind of what was put out there from leadership. And then a person in HR called me and she said, well, now what do we do? Because we have more hires than we have room, and we can't get a new office. And I'm playing Tetris, and I think I'm being driven to drink, you know? It's just like, and I can't imagine that's not happening in so many places. So that's like the opposite problem. Not enough people are coming,
Yeah.
but what happens if now we're exceeding the head count now, and we don't know who's coming when? That's the other tricky thing. So
Well, and
I'm
the
just
people
curious
that
how
want to
that's
come
playing out.
in, they want their desk.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's the funniest thing is
Yeah.
a lot of them will come in and say, well, I need my plays. And, you know, in your situation, Vivian, maybe they would look at doing more hoteling or flexible work schedules, but people want to come back to the same spot that they've been in.
But that's
We're
going
creatures of
away.
habit, right? And they want a home. So it's a hard game. I mean, Mike, you might be able to help address this a little bit more, right? In the world of real estate, how do you plan for people who are only coming in 2 or 3 days a week, but want their desk?
I have said a lot. I may have said this on the podcast in the past, but I feel like everything I know about planning went out the window. I don't
Gone.
really know. And I was talking to a friend in the industry a couple of weeks ago, and she said something exactly the way I say it. She said, if somebody tells you that they know how to plan, they're lying to you. They don't know. And I laughed because I thought I've said that like 100 times in the last 4 years. I think to the point that Vivian was making, sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. You know, this idea that we can be and ought to be more conservative about the real estate we have, and yet we want to accommodate everybody and have them have a great experience. And then we've also got, in some cases, leadership who want everybody in. And those three things are colliding in a way that I think for most of us corporate real estate guys, we don't have an answer for.
Mm.
I'm fortunate to not be in that situation. We have a thoughtful plan around this. Not every company does, and not every corporate exec has the benefit of a leadership team who's really thinking carefully about it. And I think that's a lesson it's going to take a while for us to learn, honestly.
I don't think there's enough data yet to
Right.
where this is going to shake out.
I don't,
And it is evolving. There are
Yes.
people who want to come back.
Yeah.
very slow, very, very
Yeah.
slow. And mind you, Silicon Valley, right? Let's make sure we keep this
Yeah.
focused
I was going to say,
on our home
very
court, because in some areas it's a different story. But 2003, the mortgage crisis, that was, or 2001, excuse me. That was economic. 2008 economic. I'm sorry, 2008 was mortgage. 2001 is
Yes.
.com. Point is economic, and here we are. Ours is personnel, people.
Yes. Right.
It was like it's so different, and it's just proven that you're kind of triangulating, Mike, about the three agents and they're all colliding. You couldn't be more correct. And I just don't see it landing any different than where we are right now. And I'm actually considering this somewhat of the new norm. This is real estate in the Silicon Valley going forward. And Vivian, to your point about what if companies are expanding, I mean, we're going to see that. And then we're going to see some unique, maybe like an AI company who's definitely got that growth trajectory. But to kind of go back on your point and answer your question, I mean, there are definite, coming from the real estate broker, there's definitely real estate decisions and guidance that a broker would give a company to accommodate that type of growth, and to be cognizant of, well, what happens if we go downwards and what happens if we go upwards? So the good news is there's a ton of available space in the market, so you kind of have some flexibility there.
Exactly. But, I also caught my ear what you said earlier. It also depends. I know you guys are based in San Francisco Bay Area, but I think just from, our company does ergonomics. So this is top of mind for everybody, because we don't know what to do for our people because we don't know where they are. And they're using the office differently. And, they're sort of out of sight, out of mind for some companies. I'm like, no, don't do that, because they're still on the dining room table and they're still on the, couch with the coffee table hunched over. So, but like in New York City, there tends to be more willingness to go back to the office, because I'm in New York. We're all in these crunchy little apartments, right? So suddenly a dedicated space to work is very appealing, and
Mhm.
hopping on the subway for 20 minutes isn't terrible. Now you're in the Bay Area somewhere and you're like, I am not doing that traffic thing. And I'm comfortable in my house at home or whatever. So I'm wondering if you're seeing just the geography play out very differently. Even
Well,
like
as it
urban to
relates,
suburban and just
yeah,
what
I
that looks
mean,
like.
without a doubt. And then what's interesting too is if you've got a group of people, a group of engineers or whomever who aren't going in because of a young family or a commute, it just kind of like it becomes like a run on the opportunity for other employees to not go in because A, B, and C aren't going in. So I would X, Y, and Z go in. And so, yeah, I mean, the geography definitely makes a difference. But ultimately, it just in the Silicon Valley, our utilization is so low. It just geography, convenience, ergonomics, kitchen table. It just surprises me how lack of interest there is for employees to go in. I mean, they want, and here's the thing too. If you go to the office for collaboration and for socializing and for seeing your employees and having some chemistry, the tough part is for these people is they usually have to go jump on a Zoom call because half their team or half their other calls are remote. So then they're stuck
So why come into the
again being
office?
isolated in the office.
Or the day they choose to come in,
Yeah.
nobody that they want to talk to is in the office. And then they're frustrated by that. And that just sort of that makes for a poor experience, and then they don't come in. I think that I've thought about this a lot over the last couple, 3 years. That's probably the biggest challenge that we have in how to bring people together is some kind of tool that lets everybody know what everybody else is doing without being too intrusive. Because I think it's not working to just Slack or email or text some friend and say, hey, are you going in today? Because I might go in. I don't think that's working. We need a better formula, some kind of software. I feel like I get approached all the time with companies that want to tell me who's coming to the office. And my response is, I have 5 offices around the world. I know everybody who comes in and I know when they come in. I don't need you to tell me that. What I need you to tell me is how to get them to come together and have a good experience in the office. And that's still lacking.
Yeah.
I think too, we have to change sometimes our mindset because like, for instance, for me and Vivian and Mike, we've been talking about this where you want to be able to go into the office and socialize, right? So then you need to maybe change your mindset that those aren't the days where you're going to do these virtual calls, or these are going to be the days that you got your, this is my day of connecting with people in a more human way or what have you. So kind of changing that mindset, maybe thinking through what your week looks like a little more strategically too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about changing the topic a little bit because we have 5 people here who are all in different elements of our industry. To me, and I guess you're all going to agree, probably no industry has been more affected by the pandemic than we have, because everything we've done in our careers, and some of us have been around a long time, has been completely upended. We had no idea what was coming next. And our world is office space. We lease it, we build it, we put furniture in it, and then we provide services once they're sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
And that's changed. And I wonder what everybody thinks about that.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I look at it also more granular, just the different industries. So like office absolutely taking a hit. R&D taking a hit. Even warehouse logistics is now taking a hit. And mind you, some of these were skyrocketing at certain times of the pandemic because of logistics and shipping reasons. Life science taking a huge hit.
Life
The only
science
real
too? I'm
Oh yeah.
surprised to hear that because of
Yeah.
like certain things like, oh, that's interesting.
We're doing
Yeah.
really well at one
Labs
point,
have to be
right?
on
They
They
were.
were they were the one to watch out for. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
booming. COVID.
And then to wrap it up on my thought, what's excelling right now is multifamily and retail, and we really don't circulate
You don't
that
do that.
much, but that's where the activity is. And also just a world that I'm not horribly involved in is, but capital markets. I mean, that's just on its butt right now, big time.
I am concerned about the young people who get into corporate real estate, into actual real estate. You've been around a little while, Joe, so you've got, an established career and clientele. But if you're 25 or 28 years old and you decided to sell corporate real estate, I would think a lot of those people are thinking twice about their choice
Yeah.
because it's not going to pick up anytime soon.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword too. I mean, I hope that the young studs that jump in the business make it. I really do. But these young guys who get brought in are usually working under somebody who's relatively senior.
Mhm.
And even that range of the brokers, I also see kind of disappearing as the market's so challenging. They've been working for 30, 40 years and they're saying to themselves, well, why would I battle this market again? And they're probably thinking about one foot's already out, second foot's about to go out. And those are the guys who are really kind of helping foster the younger broker. So yeah, I mean, it's a tall order for a young broker to find success right now.
I
And
would
years
jump
ago,
in to say that some of the young brokers that I've met over the last couple of years, though, boy, if they can make it through this,
Yeah.
they are going to be
They're set for
phenomenal.
life.
I mean,
Good point.
they are scrappy. They're not afraid. They're going after anything they possibly can.
Yeah.
And, if they can overcome this, they are going to be amazing and
100%.
very successful.
Thick skin, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I started my career in 2000, or 1999, right? So going through the dot-com bust was a tough time
Yeah.
for me, right? And you got really scrappy, you got creative, and you just went after anything that you possibly could.
Yeah.
So
Meera, what about you? Do you feel like it's harder for young architects and designers, that some firms will make it and some won't? What's your thinking about that?
I mean, I know I don't look that old, but I've also gone through a few of these cycles. And I, this doesn't phase me as much as I think it phases the younger ones because they haven't gone through this many. But workplace is not dead. It's just going to look
No.
different, right? And I think every so often there is an evolution of workplace like there is in every other aspect of life. So, I think about when I started and we were hand drafting everything. And then CAD came into play and everybody was really freaked out that all of our jobs were going to be gone because, now there's going to be a computer that can do all of this work for us. And then what we do is you have to pivot your mindset, as Amy was mentioning, but pivot your mindset to see how do you use these tools to make you more efficient and move you forward, right? So I think the younger generation, and I don't want to completely speak for them, but from what I've seen in the office, they're worried about those things. But I think having been around the block, I know that we just have to pivot what these new roles look like, right? So, and I think these new brokers, these young ones, they're going to find a new way to do their business, and I think it's completely natural.
You brought up drafting boards. There's a meme floating around I think on LinkedIn and Facebook of a bunch of people working at drafting boards. And a bunch of friends that I went to school with are all commenting about the fact that they miss the drafting, like that whole process of standing it. And I do miss my drafting board. I loved it. There was something about that, the manual process. And somebody posted, God, our drawings were so beautiful back then and they're so boring now. I thought, well, that's true. They really are.
When you had to revise that drawing, that was
a nightmare. Right. But I'm curious about something both you, Meera, and you, Amy, said earlier, which is, all right, company is either in an existing space, or Joe, you were able to work with somebody and get them into a new space, or downsizing, upsizing, whatever it might be. And Amy, you said something really interesting. People want their desk. But then Meera, you said, yes, but you're finding we're designing the office more as an event space, a collaborative space. And Amy then said, well, maybe that's not the day that you're doing the heads down work, and maybe you don't need the desk, but yet people want the desk. So obviously there's a disconnect. So I'm just curious.
you can see the exactly. People don't know what they want.
Okay.
They don't
I think they want it all. I think the clients,
this is new.
Yeah, exactly.
Newer. No, but it's newer because the neighborhood has sort of cropped up as opposed to you have like a designated area, and then people are sort of self-assigning unofficially, right? And they'll leave their stuff overnight, which they're not supposed to do, or whatever. And then from an ergo standpoint, it is phenomenally challenging.
Mm.
Oh, absolutely. And I was thinking
this
about
is
this.
not my desk. I can't get you a new chair. Like, are we gonna have to shove everybody into special accommodations, or is it more education based? Or gee, please, everybody get stuff that's like highly adjustable that'll handle most of your people and throw education on top of that. But anyway, I'm just curious what how that's reconciled. And
It's interesting, the ergonomic standpoint that you brought up, because I think some of the solutions that we tended to come up with are, okay, you come to the office, you may not necessarily have an assigned desk, but you have so many different work settings to work from. But ergonomics has not been really at the forefront of that conversation. So if all of the desks are taken up and you have to sit at a cafe table, and which is completely not adjustable, like, is that the right place for the well-being of the employee?
well, I can tell you from what we're hearing from employees, there's a mandate to come back. I'm not coming back because I'm not comfortable anymore in the office. My desk is gone, and my special things that I used to do are gone, and therefore I'm going to stay home because I don't want the backache, right? And I'm like, oh wow, okay. So, and I feel like that conversation is not happening enough. So
Right.
just it's interesting to hear that from the employee perspective, and it's becoming a barrier to get back to work. Flip side is many people are settled in their homes, but not enough are. So it's just like, oh my gosh, and there's 2 workstations now. So
I've seen at least a couple of clients that have mandated their employees to come back a couple days a week, and they said you can have an assigned desk if you commit to 3 days a week in the office.
Mhm.
If you don't commit to that, and you're not, we're watching and we're kind of tagging the badge data. If that's not happening, then you don't get an assigned desk. And so I think that's
reasonable.
in a way, a way to encourage people to come in. And if you do, then you get an assigned desk. If you don't, and you choose to be at home, then you don't. And that way they can, somewhat figure out the real estate needs, and have that aligned to people that are coming into the office.
That's hardly an encouragement.
Yeah.
As a user, it feels more like a discipline. And as soon as
blackmail.
you start doing that to the employees,
Yeah.
the word of mouth goes, it's toxic.
That's a very fresh perspective.
Yeah. I mean, the way that
we know it's not working.
It's not working.
We know it.
I think, first of all, it's like this, even like from the front end of the real estate solution here. All this chatter is so relevant, but what's even most interesting is if we have a client who has to relocate, we're going and looking at like a relatively short-term sublease where everything's already there, the wiring's there, the workstations are there, and we only want to be there for like 12 to 24 months. Because we don't know what's going to happen. So it's like you think about, okay, how do we solve for this and do something that's great for the employees? But then you go make a real estate decision that feels very much like a short-term kind of Band-Aid solution.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be one of my thoughts, right? Like, really, what is the amenity spaces, or what are the needs, right? To bring those people in. What are they looking for when they come in? It seems very high-end experiential is kind of what Meera and I were saying. However, Joe, what we're seeing is it feels like I don't want the least amount of risk are all this inventory and plug and play. So let's go for that. There's very little branding there's very little anything, right? They're just going to take over a space. Maybe ergonomics isn't even a consideration.
Yep.
And so it's this dichotomy, right? Of we want this great experience, but we're going to get is, a plug and play space, and we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
But I think we're running out of plug and play, aren't we?
Yes and no. It depends how you look at it. I would say that the trophy space, Class A space, is definitely the first to go. We do have quite a bit in the greater Silicon Valley. And really, there is still a lot of space in Class B, Class C, but no one's really looking at that because the Class A and trophy stuff is out there and it's priced pretty good. But some of the vacancy rates in Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, and San Jose, and all the different submarkets within San Jose, they're very high. I mean, we're in like the 30s and in some cases 40% for office. And that is just, I've never seen that in my
Astronomical.
career. It's huge.
Yeah.
But there's something interesting that we really haven't touched on, and I want to bring to this call. You go to Sand Hill, most expensive market in the Valley, and you've got venture capitalists, private equity, all these professional services, law firms, etc. And it's probably one of the more active real estate markets in the peninsula, and it's also the most expensive. But it's this culture of thinking about these VCs and these attorneys. I mean, these are the guys that are hunkering down, getting to the office 5 days a week, using space, doing 10-year deals. And it just kind of it's surprising. It's not horribly surprising, but when you look at it compared to tech, it's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this group that you were just talking about is active in the office?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the
Now,
companies
granted,
that they're servicing are not.
that's right.
That's very interesting.
That's right.
Right.
But again, they're active in the office in one of the most expensive markets. And that comes down to the culture of the private equity firm or the venture capital firm or the law firm. I mean, those types of men and women want to be in the office.
Interesting.
I think it'll be interesting to see if those venture capital firms, for example, start to push their investment companies into being in more often. They're seeing it being successful for themselves. Would it create more innovation if they were in the office more? I don't know, but it would be interesting to see what kind of pull they have.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I feel like they're the most interested in whatever is successful.
Yeah.
Right.
And
if
return on
they're
investment.
seeing that return to office isn't working, they're not going to push for that because it doesn't benefit the bottom line.
So here's something, but Mike, here's something for you too. Like a VC pumping money into a tech company, telling their CEO how the CEO should consider running a company. I don't think there's a disagreement there between the board and the CEO and the VC. And most CEOs that I work for, they want their employees back in. So I guess from the VC board CEO level, they're aligned, but it's just getting that message passed down from the CEO down into the employees where it becomes the disconnect.
I think from the VC company standpoint, they rather their clients not spend their money on workspace, but rather on whatever their product that they're developing. As long as they're getting their product to market and their return on investment is there, they're not going to care if people are spending it on or coming to the office or not.
Yeah, if you take
I think
dollars
that's
away from real estate, you can spend that on talent.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we are
running your
moving that
talent
needle from fast
dramatically.
growth to profitability. So if that's what gets them faster to profitability right now, that's what they're doing.
Interesting. I'd say about a third, maybe a third to a half, somewhere in there of our clients, and we have some very big name tech companies. They've surprised me how many have embraced remote first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's economical or people are just saying, hey, I'm more productive at home, or what, or what's driving that. But
I can say, I think we had a really hard conversation about the reality of work and what was working, and knowing that as a company, we're doing well and this remote thing works. This is reality. This is who we are now. And embracing that has been successful. And at least from what I see, the companies that are doing that, whatever their station is, and everybody has we've talked about this many times on the podcast, whatever their particular situation is, if you're embracing that situation and what's really working, why are you trying to drive it to be something that it's not? If this works and you're successful, go with it. And I don't know that most companies are there yet.
So I have a interesting, I'm kind of changing tunes a little bit, but Joe, one question that comes up is the ever evolving, I'm looking for new real estate. What size space should I be looking for? What type of space? What are you seeing out there, right? We have our square footage per employee has gone up, down, and all different directions. What kind of, data are you pulling together to help people find the right space for them?
Oh, that's a really good question. A little bit of history. 2019, I mean, we were running a typical tech company was probably around 150 to 175 square feet per person. Very open, collaborative space. The conference rooms and privates were interior build, leaving the natural light for the workstations in the stronger majority. It's so hard to answer that question. I want to share that if we had to put a square footage per employee, it's definitely north of 200 square feet per employee. Where that lands is totally custom to the individual company. But I want to, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this, and Mike, see where your head's at. But the office space almost needs to be like a menu of services and attributes for your employees. You need to have the outdoor space, the gym, the on-site cafe, the collaborative space, the heads down focus space, clean rest. I mean,
Quiet space, right.
everything. It's like it's to solve this, you're going to need to give everybody their own desk. You're probably running around 250 square feet per person, and you had to have all these different features in your space. You're trying to eliminate any reason why an employee won't come in, right? Because you're solving for
Bingo.
everything.
Bingo.
If you've provided everything, what are they going to say? And the only thing really challenging is the commute, right? And that's like usually like the number one issue. So I hope that answers your question. I think the takeaway is, let's call it 250 square feet per person, give the space everything it needs. And from there, it's probably
funny that you mentioned per square foot, Joe, because I'm working on a couple of projects right now, and I have never calculated it until just now. I had no idea. Because nobody's asking that question. We're asking about all the services, just exactly what you said. How many services can we squeeze into that building? And oh, by the way, what's left that we can put workstations in? And that's kind of how we
I think it's interesting on that topic, Mike, is that there's a lot more put on the landlords now to create these amenity spaces, right? And to really entice and to get a look at it. So I was curious on amenity spaces. You mentioned outdoor, right? Maybe having a gym, cafe, different things like that. Is that kind of important now to these companies as they're looking?
It certainly has been to me. And when we are doing searches, that's what we're seeing. Like really, almost every space has done something. Most landlords have been doing that kind of work over the last 2 or 3 years to provide more services on site, which also eliminates some of our requirement for space. Like if there's a cafe, then I don't know, maybe we don't need a dining room. If there's a boardroom that we can rent/borrow, then we don't need that. I don't need to put 10 pieces of fitness equipment in a room if there's one across the hall. So that saves us money. And it's already built, so it's an enticement to go there. So I think that we are seeing a lot of that.
We're doing a lot of those amenity spaces actually.
And that's how they're drawing people. I mean, I sort of feel for landlord developers. It's hard to get tenants right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
It's just also to even get more granular. It's like, mother's room, wellness room.
Yes.
I mean, in
prayer
some cases,
room,
like prayer room,
meditation.
And so like you all of a sudden, which office space was once like a lobby, a kitchen, a ton of workstations and conference rooms and a server room, is now way more dynamic. I mean, there's so much more that goes into it. And then you throw in the tech an IT piece around how to manage a space and operate the space and all the things that go into running it. It's a totally different world.
Yeah.
And then you do it all right, and then you want people to be there, and then they're not really there.
Right.
Well, I had an interesting experience over the weekend where one of our buildings here in the Bay Area, they have a restaurant in it or a cafe, but they're open on the weekends and they're bringing people in for different events and things like that. And this specific one had a band that was performing outdoors. They have fire pits. And so instead of it being a Monday through Friday office building cafe, it is now starting to draw more as a community place on the weekends and evenings. I guess they do things as well. So I thought that was really interesting. When I saw the address, I'm like, I didn't understand where I was going, but
That's
for a
interesting.
Saturday night. Yeah.
And
This
I
is
will
prob-
say,
Go ahead, Bid.
I will say that as my company, PBE, is a virtual company, has been from its inception. And I myself go in and out of times where I'm super nomadic, right? So just even here in New York, I work out of my apartment. And so I've embraced the world of co-working spaces, sometimes just because convenient. So I've got to be in Manhattan for the day. Let me park myself somewhere. So I have this app that I can find seats in co-working spaces around really the world, actually. So I've done it in many major cities, but I see what's available and 10 seats available, et cetera, et cetera. But they're very specific things that will draw me in as a user, right? So there's that space that like looks really cool, but then it's kind of noisy and everybody's really close together. And there isn't that like private space. And if I have to make phone calls, like there's no phone booth. I'm like, well, forget that. Like that's off, Or there's the one that does have the meditation room and the wellness space, and they might even be offering a yoga class, and there's the organic bar downstairs with I will be more drawn towards that because I can be more productive in those spaces. So that's an interesting thing. I wonder is considered, or I just wonder how it's considered in just looking at the space, that square footage, and then Meera and Amy, that when you're coming in to design it and furnish it and whatnot, how much does the productivity piece get considered? What do people need to be productive?
I think that's different. It's based on people's roles, right? I think an engineer is going to say that their needs for productivity is very different than someone maybe in a G&A function. One thing you touched on is the co-working space that you're looking at. Maybe they offer a yoga lesson or whatever, and that appeals to you. I think what we're seeing too is a lot of these buildings that are near retail spaces or restaurants or whatnot are a lot more attractive now, right? Because you can go to work, but you could also, meet someone for happy hour or dinner afterwards, and it's very convenient. So it's like the convenience of where this building is located, as well as all of the amenities it provides, is a huge factor now in what clients are looking for. And I think these landlords, you were saying, Joe, the Class A stuff is being snatched up because, it's now the prices have dropped, and so, those are less and less available. These Class B buildings are starting to have to invest in their buildings and in order to attract the tenants. And if you're closer to any of those adjacent amenity type spaces or features, that's even better.
Meera, with that,
go ahead, Amy.
Sorry, Dave. I was just wondering with that kind of what design elements or things have you found that have really kind of helped with motivating, we're finding that people need a purpose, right? When they come in, is there any takeaways or things that we can kind of leave with that you found to be successul?
Let me add on to that because that's exactly where I was going.
Oh,
Tell me what's the
minds.
weirdest thing you've been asked for lately?
Did it come from you, Mike?
No.
Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Let's see. Gosh, I feel like I don't have any clients that ask me for weird things.
It's always it has to do with the bathroom. I'm sure.
Usually, yeah, something like that, right? The bathroom. I've had some past clients that have asked me for very strange things, but has nothing to do with Richard at all.
I believe you and I talked about bars earlier today, so there's that. A lot of people may find that
Oh.
unusual. We don't, but yeah.
A lot
Yeah,
of companies have bars in their office now. Yeah.
They
A lot of
still?
people.
Oh,
But a real bar, like a real bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Or
did one time see it.
Speakeasies
I
have
did
become more
one time
popular.
see a speakeasy in an office, and I thought that was the
Mhm.
coolest thing.
Yeah.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did design one. It's not yet built out. Tech client here in San Jose, but we designed a speakeasy. That was a fun project.
Yeah.
They're finding a lot more of these designs are also hospitality driven.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's kind of, changed from like the corporate workplace, where there was a clear division of when you were at work, you worked. When you went home, you were at home.
right.
And now those lines are blurred. And so office spaces are now being designed a little bit more with hospitality in mind, because they want people to feel comfortable leaving their homes and going to the office. And so
Yeah.
what's familiar than like a warm space, right? With like comfortable furniture. And, maybe there's that bar because, after work, you can go with your coworker and just grab a drink and socialize and be together. And so that's kind of a trend. Things, I think post-pandemic, things have started to go in that direction.
So gone are the days of the snacks during the day. Instead, we're just going to have bars and at the
Drink
end.
ourselves silly afterwards.
Just
Right.
Manhattans and Mai Tais.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forget the fresh fruit.
That's the
Well, a nice
reward.
gin and tonic would be fine too.
Yeah, there you go. And then you go to the gym afterwards, of course. This all works out.
Of
Yeah.
course,
Exactly.
of course.
Mike, we'll get you some tequila shots.
Yeah,
That's not a regular. I should say that's not a regular, but thanks.
just
I-
like
We should
water.
probably wrap up here pretty soon. Meera, did you have any closing thoughts you wanted to share?
I guess, it's funny because we talk a lot about like amenities, and I think that word probably needs to be redefined a little bit. It's no longer, the snacks and those are nice to have. Some people still have them because they're going to create these social spaces for people to gather, and everyone loves food. But that's no longer the driver. And I think the new amenity is more agility and flexibility. I think people want, we're replacing high design right now with more frequent redesign, and the ability to change things around. So variety of work settings and postures, employees' wellness. So catering to, like Vivian, you touched on ergonomics, depending on where you're working, like how comfortable is the employee? And then enhancing all these gathering spaces and making them multi-purpose. You don't want to waste real estate, but you do want to encourage people to be together. And so how do you then utilize that space when people aren't in the office? So I think that's kind of the new amenity, and it appeals to both the employee and the client, and probably the landlord as well. But that's a little bit more of what we're seeing from my side.
Joe? Any parting thoughts? or
Closing
predictions
remarks.
for the future? Or just, where you see things going or not going? Or...
Yeah. I see pricing continuing to drop.
Yeah.
I see vacancy going up. I see, you know,
Really?
I'm sorry.
Really?
We can't have that anymore.
I'm only
Hey,
saying
it is what
because
it is.
we've gotten busier. And so my thought is that it's going in the opposite direction.
Oh, are you serious? You think asking rates are going back up?
I don't think asking rates are going back up, but I think vacancies are going down.
Oh, we'll have to chat about that on
Really?
episode B.
Yeah.
We'll have you
No,
come
I
back in
really
6
the
months and we'll
I
check it
I
out.
see vacancy rates climbing. I mean, we have so many remember, a lot of the big blocks of space, and even like a 50,000 square foot block of space. In 2019, those were 5 to 10 year deals. I mean, we are just now starting to see some of those big boy deals expiring this year, next year, and the few years to come. So unfortunately, I see a lot of good space coming back to the market all over the valley. And with the high, availability and high vacancy, you're going to get downward pressure on pricing. I mean, we're seeing pricing for Class A direct space in downtown markets, like downtowns that you want to be in, get really low. I mean, there's like some very some great pricing out there.
I think this is a good time to pounce on that.
So yeah, I'm actually here to tell you guys it's a tenant's market. I mean, if you're a tenant looking for office space, this is a really good time in the market. Landlords are doing things they haven't done in many years, and you've got plenty of choices. What my advice to anybody looking is give yourself plenty of time. The best way a broker can negotiate a good deal is when you give that broker time and he can use the market to leverage against the market, has competitive options, and can truly have like an internal private agenda. So with like myself and my client and how we go to the market and how we're going to secure our number one space. I mean, there is a true art and skill there that when we are given, ample time, we can put in place. So yeah, that kind of summarizes where I think we're, and I will agree with you. I think that the utilization will increase slowly but surely. I think we will see a little bit more activity. I think that we will see some good alignment on improvement, but just nowhere near 2019. I mean, we have a long way to go.
Oh,
So
a long way.
I'm baby steps.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about, because much of our activity is consolidating or like removing space, shedding space. And so though we're busy doing that, it means for the overall market, it's going to increase vacancy. So
Well, it's a lot of probably small mid-market type size business. And you mentioned it's the larger ones, right, that are shedding the space. So yeah, I mean, I think if I was to summarize kind of overall what we just learned today is we're still in that unknown phase, right, of really learning and being flexible in how we find real estate, what our needs are for our companies and our employees, and then how we design it and what that looks like. So there's still a lot to be learned, but I think we're headed in the right direction. And I think, the momentum is starting. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Guys, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It was
And we're gonna
fun.
have to have you back.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun
to see where
we should do a number two. I agree.
Or 9 months, whatever. Like, okay, where are we now? But anyway, thank you a million. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys the next time.
Thanks very much.
All right. Have a great day.